For me, growing up, I never labeled myself one thing or the other. Never. And I didn't let people label me. I just thought, this is who I am. Is to say is who you are as a person and have the confidence enough to stand up and not let people label you.
Welcome to the BLOC Party podcast, where leaders of color across the life sciences industry come to talk shop, share stories, and keep it real. On this show, we sit down with leaders and innovators across pharma, business, and academia to explore the journeys, lessons, and experiences that have shaped their paths and perspectives. On this episode, we're sitting down with Dr. Bahija Jallal, one of the industry's most accomplished leaders, detailing her remarkable journey growing up in Morocco, becoming one of the world's leading biotech executives, and now serving as CEO of Immunocore. Dr. Jallal talks about the mentors who shaped her leadership style, the unwavering support of her family, and why she believes that this is one of the most exciting moments in the history of biotech. Thanks for joining us, and let's get into it.
Welcome back to the BLOC Party podcast. I am so excited about our guest today because she is someone who I have admired for a long time, had the benefit of working with for a little while as well. And I just think that the BLOC community is going to be really treated to something special to learn a little bit more about Dr. Bahija Jallal. So Bahija, thank you so much for joining us on the BLOC Party. For those who don't know Bahija, she is the CEO of Immunocore. But I want to kind of start way back in your upbringing from Morocco. And I know that you were one of a number of siblings, and I know that you were raised pretty much by your mother. You lost your father early in life. So let's talk about what it was like growing up in Morocco. I don't think this is the first BLOC Party podcast with a Moroccan guest. So let's hear a little bit about that.
You know, I grew up in Morocco, like you said. I think my father died. I was 9, so I had the privilege of being raised by a really strong woman, and I was number 6 in 7 siblings, and that actually was really a positive thing. That we had our small family in a big country like that. And no, it was, I think it was mixed. I think it was very much, I have happy memories, a lot of happy memories and a lot of pain as well. But all in all, a lot of learning, I would say.
And was your mother involved in science or the healthcare field?
Oh, I think she would have been absolutely dangerous if she went to school. She was, I swear, she was like a super smart woman who's never actually get to go to school, because that was, at that generation, you just don't go to school. She pushed us, encouraged us, gave us all the opportunities, was really remarkable. And we used to tell her, you would have been very, very dangerous if you had.
So clearly with her generation, the expectation wasn't there to get an education, at least for a woman, I imagine, at that time. And obviously, as you said, you're blessed that you're being pushed in this direction. But what was the expectation for women at when you were coming up? Was there an expectation still that you would not pursue an education, certainly an advanced degree education that you ultimately pursued?
In Morocco, you have a big exam to finish high school, and it's a national exam. So it's really, really tough. And I remember waiting for the results that actually go into the newspaper and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was waiting for that, and I was very, very, very nervous and things like that. And somebody from the family said, "Why are you in this state?" And I said, "Well, obviously I'm waiting for the results." And I would never forget what she said to me, which was, "So what? You're gonna be going and working in a bank like everybody else, or getting married. Uh, why are you so nervous?" Basically, you made it all the way to finishing high school. That should be more than enough. And so that was the expectation. Most likely just getting married and finishing, doing the other job that is important job. But that's the expectation, but not from my mother. My mother was very much, you're gonna, for all of us, you're gonna go as far as you can, and it really is. It was about knowledge and about not stopping.
And did you have an interest in science at that point when you were a youngster, or did that come later? What did you find fun when you were a kid?
Obviously, I didn't know it was the science per se, but I was interested in STEM, from the beginning. But what really, when I look back, I was very much that annoying child that asked why, and it started like, really. Um, but it started with my father's death because it was a medical error, and
Mm,
as I was growing up, I was constantly asking what happened and why and how can we avoid that and
mm,
things like that. I think that's really what crystallized for me that this path where I am basically in science. So that's how when I look back, that's really what stood up to me.
mm. And you said you were number 6 out of 7 siblings. So did your older siblings also pursue either science or education, or were they off doing kind of other things?
They all pursued their education, so but none of them were really on science except my brother was engineer, so I don't count him as the science like science paper I do. My others were in commerce and economy and things like that. When somebody is sick or something like that, I have the tough thing to understand a lot more than what they do, what that
Yeah.
disease or something like that. But yeah, no, it's I'm the only one.
All right. So how does this, very smart young lady who clearly did well on the exam end up, through high school and going to the University of Paris to pursue a degree in biology and to pursue this science career?
Well, then there is a story there. So I
All right, let's go.
I told you I ask why and things like that. I think my first year I went to university in Morocco, and I got really involved in politics, and
Really?
yeah, and it was very dangerous time. It was the previous king who was a little bit tough. He was very smart but very tough. You better not talk about politics, otherwise you disappear.
Hmm.
And so I got really involved in, and we had seatings and stuff like that, as they call it, um, and get really active in the whole politics stuff. And it was such a big deal that all the exams for that year were basically didn't happen, and we
Wow.
were going to take the exam in September. So it wasn't really serious, and we'll get the police coming and stuff like that. I should not say it, maybe, but it was at that time. And my mother, that's why I told you she was dangerous with my sisters, just thought she's going to disappear, if
Mm.
we do something. So they basically arranged, brought to Paris to the university and everything. I got accepted. I didn't know about it. And she literally, because I was in another city, she literally came in. I was at the campus. I had a room in a campus, and she convinced the guy, I don't know how, to open the room and let her get in. So she was in my room. I walk
Wow.
in. Yeah, I walk in and she said, "Okay, pack your stuff. You're going to Paris." It was Thursday and it was like, "You have to go on Sunday." Um,
Wow.
said
72
absolutely
hours.
no way. I cried, I did whatever, but still,
Yeah.
I went with her, and that's how I ended up in Paris, not
No
even
way.
doing anything. So she saved me basically.
So did she, I mean, you guys both had a perception that you were in danger at that point.
Yeah, I just, for me, I didn't think I was in danger. I was, remember
Yeah.
I was 18 or something, so you're
Yeah.
invincible, when you are there for, fighting for our rights and things like that. But it was a really dangerous situation, actually.
Wow. What a crazy story. That is a good story. That's fantastic. All right. So you land in Paris, and at that point, do you let go of your activism and focus on the books, or what happens at that point? How does that change you?
Well, it was very overwhelming to start with. It was the
Yeah.
first time I got on a plane. But then I land, and the person who was gonna, some friend of friend of friend that I don't know, was gonna pick me up, and then was not there because the flight was delayed. So I was standing there looking at how people go into the phone booth, put money, because we didn't have them in Morocco. You know, so I watched 2 or 3 people do that, then I went and called him. So that was just part of being really overwhelmed. Is in a big city. I've never been, to before. University was huge. So I had enough on my hands.
So what's the spark that gets you into science and to pursue this biotechnology kind of PhD program at Max Planck in Germany?
What I really loved is the fact that you're constantly learning. You don't know everything, and you're researching and you're understanding and the logics of it. So when I did my master's in Paris, I thought, okay, well, I actually was, playing with the idea of going back, and here's my mother again. She's like, no, just, continues. I owe everything to her. And so I did my PhD, and the PhD was fun. It was a lot of fun because then you really learn how to do research. And, so from there, I completely fell in love with doing research, really.
And so how does this get you to the United States? What was I know in your CV, kind of Sugen is where you kind of start in your
Yeah.
scientific career. Is that the first job out of school?
So I went from Paris to Germany. That's where I did my postdoc. And then after the postdoc, I had a permanent position at Max Planck, basically in the lab where I was. And then, of course, I met my husband. We get married, and we wanted to go to the U.S. That he does his postdoc, and I was, had an appointment with another lab. The long story short, it's never easy. So I basically ended up at Sugen, and it was at the very beginning of targeted therapy, which was really exciting. So that's how we ended up in California. My husband went to do his postdoc in Stanford, and I was at Sugen.
Well, one of the things that I've always admired about you is, clearly you have kind of tremendous scientific prowess that is well above my head, but I know other people who do have a tremendous scientific prowess who think the world of you. But certainly, but watching you as a leader is really extraordinary. And I wondered where did these leadership chops come from in your early days in the lab? And I know going from Sugen to I think Chiron, it sounded like you had by that time kind of really hit your stride on leadership and how to drive an organization through people, et cetera. So what were the early kind of signs from a leadership perspective that that help you to be the person that you are now?
I have to go back to my mother. If you think about her leadership,
Yeah.
she lost her husband. She doesn't go to school. She's whatever. And then she had 7 kids to actually, it takes a lot of leadership. There are some qualities that are, we still talk about them today, and how they influenced us. And then after that, I think, there is the element also of, I would say, being the cup half full. So it's really important. And along the way, I was lucky to have some mentors. I had some really tough ones and bad ones, I would say. Like, so you learn as much from them, frankly, because I make every little thing that I go through as a learning experience. So the bad ones, you learn how not to be, right? How not to
Mhm.
be, what to avoid, having, and then some of the good ones that, I just think the universe put in my path that were very, very instrumental to who I am today.
So if I take you back to those early days when you're leading at Sujin, I think our audience would find this very insightful because often our audience are one of the only people of color in their organization or the only leader of color in their organization. So here you are, you're a young scientist from Morocco by way of Paris and Germany. And now you've arrived in the States, and you don't, you've said this in other interviews. There was no straight line for you. This was kind of all over the place, but you had the confidence that even though you hadn't clicked every box that maybe others have checked, you belonged. So tell me how you got that confidence, and how did you feel at that point in your career that might be helpful for the other people who are feeling similarly kind of off balance because their path is a different one.
I would say never give up to start with, because it's and never, I think not think that you're going to have a straight line. First of all, that's what I tell my kids. The straight line is boring. You're going to go, because that's how you learn, right? So you learn, you take every opportunity as a learning opportunity. Sujan was not easy by any means. At some point, I reported to a woman who was the head, and all her reports were men. And then when came time to promote me, she didn't want to promote me. I knew that from the stuff. And then she was made to promote me by the president, and saying,
Really?
So when she promoted me, in spite of her not wanting, she literally called me into her office and she said, the good news is you've been promoted. The bad news is now I'm no longer going to be able to tell, I think the admin, get me my boys.
Oh my
Literally
God.
said that to me, right? And I just said thank you. And every time I had things like this, it was for me really almost, it doesn't mean you're not human. It doesn't hurt. You do all the stuff, but what you do the next day, you just say, I'm going to let her really do that, or I'm actually going to show her, or, the fact that she was made to promote me is because I worked with everybody in the company. I didn't let my only manager know how, I work. I built relationships, all based on what we need to do for the science and stuff like that. And that's really what got me the promotion. Because when you have something like this, you have to get to the point where this has nothing to do with you. It has to do with her, basically.
Yeah.
Me, something like this. But it doesn't mean I don't want to minimize it, because you do, it does hurt. You get discouraged, you do all this kind of things, but the next day is the important one.
That's great advice. That is great advice. And as we obviously do these podcasts with people of color who, as I said, are often different in the corporate environment. And for you, there's so many areas of difference, I'm sure, that when you came to, right? So not just a woman of color, but a woman of color who's an immigrant, who comes to this country, who has spoken a different language growing up, all of those things. How much did you try to kind of assimilate, for lack of a better word? I want to kind of blend in and be like the majority, versus I'm going to lean into who I am. And how did that lesson, for a lot of people, including myself, that navigation was a lifetime in the coming. When I was young, I was much more interested in trying to be like everybody else because that felt safe. And then when I learned that I wasn't very good at being other people, it actually, it started to take off for me. So how did that work for you?
For me, growing up and learning really, where I never labeled myself one thing or the other. Never. And I didn't let people label me one way or the other. I never thought about myself as immigrant. I never thought about myself as person of color. I never thought about myself. I just thought this is who I am. I never also, you know, uh, basically emphasize Paris and stuff like that versus I'm Moroccan. So that's where I come from, and I have no problem with that, and I'm proud of that, and I think I worked really hard to do that with my kids as well. Is to say is who you are as a person, and have the confidence enough to stand up and not let people label you. I noticed one thing in the US, frankly, that we label everything. So that's
Mhm.
completely new to me when I had kids. Everybody was saying the terrible twos. I'm like, why are they terrible? Like at two, in my culture, and that's maybe some of the positives, when you are coming from other places, is that we never label two as terrible twos. And so that will start showing you that when we label ourselves, we kind of set the expectation.
Mm.
And I didn't want to let anyone set that expectation on me. Of course I know who I am, but that's more important. And then I focus on the work. It is not so much about trying to get the approval from people that, please see that I am maybe of color, but I am smart or something like that. It's just convincing them with the work that you do, with who you are, because the more confidence you have, the better you're going to be, the best at your job. Nobody can um contest that, basically.
I've seen with my own eyes the confidence that your mother clearly instilled in you. I know what I read about you in terms of what you did at Chiron, and what I saw with my own eyes and what you did with the Immunocore is to go in with a vision for something that was a change in terms of what the company wanted to do before. And that change is not always popular. Often it's not popular with the people who are there currently. And one of the things that I was just uh, uh, in awe of, that I saw with my own eyes, was your ability to lead change, lead through that kind of discord, or that challenge, which made a lot of people upset, but also have a very positive outlook, and ultimately end up with people who were so absolutely enamored with you and with the change, that you had this really, really incredible culture. A lot of people can lead through change, but there's so much of a cultural hit. It's almost net neutral. But you're able to not only lead through the change, but also have the positive cultural hit on the other side. So clearly that's confidence, because you know what you're doing. But on the people side, how did that journey kind of end up where you're so good at being both tough, but also someone who people just admire and really want to work for?
No, I actually really love working with people. The first mentor was somebody who I hated at the beginning. I really
Mm,
hated,
really?
because I was at Sujan getting the fours and the fives every time,
Mhm.
and promoted very quickly. And he came and he gave me a three, and I was so shocked. And I said, I'm not a three person, and I am E3. And he basically said, yeah, no, everything you said, that's what I would expect from a director. And I went home and I cried and I said, I am quitting. I am absolutely quitting. And
Mm.
my husband said, okay, so tomorrow, we can manage. It's not a problem. Let's wait until tomorrow. I woke up the next day, and I said, I'm going to show him. I said, okay, I'm postponing my, quitting until the year from now, because I will show him first that I'm not a three, and then I'll do that. And what it did to me is, in that I realized, when I look back, that's the year I really started my growth, and I started growing because somebody was challenging me, and saw something in me that I didn't even see myself. He kept on like, challenging me and challenging me. And so I really believe in people, in seeing. I always call it this way, and that's what I told my manager. But I tell my managers, you need to how to get the gold out of people, right? So because find the gold in people, because the best thing you can have is when you see people grow. That's and how you do it, you challenge them, because we never know our power and how much we can do is somebody else who can come along and say challenges you to do that. So that part is really fun. It doesn't mean I'm always honest with people. Like, if um if you ask people now, who they're gonna say she's tough, but she's fair. What's really important for me is whatever decision I make, whatever, because sometimes we have to make tough decisions and stuff like that. Well, I always say I have to be able to look at myself in the mirror if I'm and sleep at night. If I can do it because of the right thing, because I feel like this is the right decision for the people. The way I measure it, I look at myself in the mirror and like I sleep at night, then I will do it. They might not like it right now, but if you do it for the good of the people, they will see it eventually. And I think that's really what happens. Hopefully, that's what I try to do.
Before we get back into the conversation, here's a quick word from BLOC. BLOC is a member-supported community dedicated to connecting and empowering professionals across biotech, pharma, and healthcare. If you're not already a member, we'd love to have you join us, whether you're a student, scientist, or CEO. And if you're enjoying the BLOC Party podcast, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment or two. Now let's get back to the party.
And I also know from watching you that you've built extraordinarily diverse teams without focusing on diversity, if you will. People who work with you have all been extraordinary, but they come from lots of different walks of life, lots of different socioeconomic and gender and ethnic walks of life. So how did that kind of come together, and how, when you're talking to leaders of color or leaders of anywhere from anywhere, how do you talk about team building, particularly as it relates to diversity of experience?
So I am a firm believer in innovation, right? So I chose this path for that, because that's innovation. That's just really, really amazing. And I absolutely also believe that you cannot innovate if you don't have people who don't think the same way as you, same background as you, and everything. And so if you focus on that, right, and you focus on, when you hire, on people who, first of all, they're masters they understand what they're doing. They are good at what they're doing, and leave everything else, right? Everything else you can teach people, right? You can, I so not focus on, do they have the executive presence, or stuff like that. I start with the diversity of thought, people who are not just going to say yes and just not gonna, but they have their own minds. In the previous job that I have, and now we didn't measure it yet, but we will at some point, we were talking about, diversity and how we're going to do it and stuff like that. And AstraZeneca was basically saying, okay, we need the percentage here, a percentage there. And I said, I'm not going to do any of these, give me, 4 years from now, whatever we'll measure. And I'm so proud of what we had, because we focused on the science, on the technical attributes, on everything. The day I thought we have a really diverse, environment, we do this TGIF, and we used to give money for different groups, what they want to do. Every Friday, it will be another group. The day the Chinese community came to me, Chinese American, and said, we want to use it to showcase our culture and showcase our dance and food and everything, what I thought, we did it. The environment is conducive to people feeling comfortable that they can represent who they are and stuff like that. So, which is my last point is, yes, you have to hire and stuff like that, but you have to make sure that the environment is conducive for that, right? So that you pay attention in meetings, that, people are all talking, that you have, that you lead by example and so on.
Sometimes folks will say, "Hey, look, I want to build a team with lots of diversity of thought, of people, etc. I just can't." And I ended up with 6 people who are exactly like me. I tried, I just can't. And I think what you've highlighted is kind of the plan for actually getting there, and how you can actually get it done, which I think is super important for people to hear. We skipped a little bit through, a big part of your career and a big job that you had at becoming ultimately president of MedImmune and on an EVP at AstraZeneca. And I want to talk to you about that environment, because many of our listeners and viewers are in large companies. And again, trying to navigate. One of the things that I hear a lot from people is, I feel like, I want to move up. I'm not getting what I want thus far, and I don't know if it's me or if it's, my performance. I think I'm performing well. I've got all of the trappings, but it's just not happening for me. So, leading in a large organization, what advice would you give to either younger people or maybe even mid-level executives that were saying, "Hey, how do I get to the place that you are?"
So I would say this is where a mentor is really important, because it takes the whole, you can describe where you are and stuff like that. Because for me, it's as important to get out of a toxic environment, or an environment where, it's not conducive to, promoting people and things like that. And to do it fast, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard. You find people 10 years, 15 years, and they're still wondering if it's me or them.
And it changes them. They become less because they get caught in that loop. You're exactly right.
So that's really important. I think in a big company like that, you have to, find your, um, again, your mentors. There's always, that's the good thing about the big company. You're always going to find people that that who can help you. They have a lot of things. You have to use that opportunity. But the most important thing, it comes back to your work, right? So it's just, how can I stand out? That means you have to speak up in meetings. You have to, stand out with your work, because it is harder. Like in a small company, everybody knows everybody and stuff like that. But even in a big company, these are about teams, and really believe in the power of sponsorship, not only mentorship, but sponsorship. And how do they know if you have a sponsor? Is when you speak up, right? If you speak up, how, so many times you hear somebody in a meeting or something saying, "Yeah, I know that person. I've seen them in this, and they spoke up," and stuff like that. So it's less worrying about, is it me, is it them, and stuff like that. Is, if I am doing my best work, and I am convinced I'm doing my best work, I speak up, I have all the stuff, and still things are not happening. That's really, it might happen somewhere else, and maybe you're just in the wrong environment. But the most important thing first, in a big company, how you distinguish yourself is, being an enterprise leader is not just what you're doing, getting in. You have also a huge learning, platform there, where you can learn a lot as well. So it really depends on you, don't let the scale, bother you, that it's so big that I can't do anything. You can actually differentiate yourself.
My take is that big companies, um, it's a there's a big middle. It can be really hard to be really bad, and you can be pretty mediocre for a long time. It can also
Correct.
be really hard to be great. And to really think about how you get to that, how you get on the other end of the tail where you're truly great. You have to really think about impact and moving the needle and actually getting things done, because you can be in that middle and very comfortable for a long time. And it's also why a lot of people like yourself, who are great, choose to ultimately leave and go to a place where they can apply that greatness more directly to a smaller company. And I think that's what attracts a lot of us to some of the smaller biotech companies, et cetera.
And if I can ask a question here too, I feel like you're speaking a lot on kind of like exiting toxicity or really just finding a space where you can truly kind of flourish. And as a scientist, I come from a research science background, and I hear a lot of people from science backgrounds with a very high tolerance to failure, very high tolerance for toxic, tough environments. You know, when everything is going wrong, that's kind of business as usual to a certain degree. And it can be difficult for folks to finally either find the courage to pivot or really feel self-assured that it's not that this is just, you know, the process working itself out. It's time to actually physically move. So for you and for others who might be listening, how do you have that confidence in yourself to know, like, I can invest in myself, I can pick up, I can go somewhere else, whether that's in a PhD, maybe even finding a new supervisor or jumping companies or really putting yourself forward when maybe that sponsor isn't necessarily, you know, fully in your corner, or at the very least, maybe if you don't feel like you've had that type of mentorship network that can push you through.
You know, when you look at the scientists, you know, they really are special people in a way, because we, you know, and especially when you're a scientist in a company, for instance, you know, drug development is not easy. So your tolerance for failure has to be very high. Otherwise, you can't make it. 97% of the stuff don't work.
Yeah.
And maybe then you do that. There is also you know, as we go through school, I keep on telling people, we don't learn not one single things of communication and other things. And I think and then we go from, you know, being a PhD or postdoc for, you know, is the survival of the fittest, you know, how to basically work by yourself and do the stuff. And then you're thrown into a company, and now you have to be collaborative, and you have to take advantage of all the networking that happens and things like that. And it takes time. Sometimes it really takes time to get through this stuff. That's why I kept on saying you have to look for mentors. The big companies are good about this, like use the resources that exist, because there's a lot of resources on mentorship, on this and that. Work like you are doing, right? So you have to get your head up, right, and say what are all the resources that are out there, and then you're going to find people that are like you, who are also saying, well, is it me, is it whatever, right? And especially now with the social media, where you can find all the information, all the people, we owe it to ourselves to actually do that. When I was going through these things, it was, if I didn't have in my path, you know, one or two mentors who were fantastic, you know, I doubted myself so many times. Especially when my postdoc advisor basically told me, I still have his letter, told me, you're nothing without me. You will never go anywhere without me and stuff like that.
Wow.
Because I was gonna leave him, and he's like, you don't leave me, you know. But now with the social media, with work that you do, with you know, other associations, that's, you know, people have resources and they have to use those resources, really.
Yeah, so the answer just being like, find community, talk to people, don't sit in your own bubble of toxicity and reminiscing and ruminating, and actually connect with people who can pull you out of that, give you the clarity, and hopefully elevate you. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
Because the probability that you're the only one suffering from this or going through this or whatever is very, very, very low.
Great point.
Yeah.
Look, Bahija, I could talk to you all day, and I don't want to take too much of your time. I have one other question. And you know, we've talked about your leadership and your toughness and all of the things that you overcame to become who you are. But one of the things I also know about you is you're an incredible optimist, and you've made the point that this is the best time ever to be involved in science. And why do you feel that way? And why do you encourage people to do what we do?
It has never been as exciting as it is right now, because we have all the tools we have. I'm not even going to talk about AI, which is also amazing. You know, just, you know, when we saw things like CRISPR and other things come, you know, it's really the technology is at the point that's unbelievable. The science is at point that's unbelievable. And believe it or not, there are still things we don't understand, which is fantastic. I like that the fact that we continue to try to understand, but we are, the impact of what we do, I think, is even more the reason why I'm doing what we are doing, because if we can change, one patient at the time, that is, a life worth living. And really, frankly, that's how I feel. It's a privilege. I told my team and the group, actually, this is not a job for me. This is a real privilege, doing what I love to do, which is, helping patients.
Well, that's awesome. And it's a privilege for our community to have been able to hear your story and to spend some time listening to the very practical insight and advice that you provided. So thank you so much. And I know Tommy has the very important next step of the podcast, the BYOX. So Tommy, go ahead.
I have a postcard. I have a BYOP. It's a postcard from Musée d'Orsay, which is my favorite museum in the world, in Paris. I realized I studied abroad for a semester, so we have a little bit of crossover there. We studied a little bit in France.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But do you enjoy Musée d'Orsay? Have you been?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Especially when you enter, it was like a train station, remember, right? And you enter and there's this clock.
Oh, yeah, stunning. Yeah, I love the layout, the architecture, and even more so, I feel like tying into our conversation, there's a lot of like cross usage, cross culture, cross implementation of just so many things. Like it's a train station. There's a beautiful cafe. There's art everywhere. It's like multi-generational. And speaking to you, to me, you're a scientist who's not really about the labels. Like you're the CEO, the president, the parent, the person who's come from so many different avenues, and you're really about seeing people, seeing things as they are, letting your work speak for you, and just cultivating like authenticity and community at all of these steps. So, I mean, certainly a very galvanizing path for someone like me who's coming out of the STEM space, figuring out what she's doing with the rest of her life, and just trying to just be more about it than talking about it, Like, don't just talk about it, be about it. Like, here's what I've done, here's who I am, and that's going to kind of speak for itself. So
that's Bahija. That is
so, I mean, you have your life ahead of you, which is exciting. So in this era of science, it's really amazing.
Definitely.
But thank you for what you said. If you allow me 2 seconds, I'll go get what I'm bringing.
Great.
So this is when Morocco gets the 17 and younger, they got the World Cup.
Yeah,
they won the World Cup, and basically Morocco for years never made it, or made it the first whatever. So the theme is resilience for me, and never to give up. For us to say Morocco won the World Cup for the 17s and whatever, it's a dream come true, and it's mostly
awesome.
making the impossible possible, right? And this one is for Immunocore is making the impossible possible. Same thing. So it's about resilience and never give up.
That's awesome. Well, my BYOX is BYOB, and since I'm keeping with the French theme, so I'm sitting in our place in Cape Cod, and the name, we have a sign on our house that's kind of a thing out here. You name your place, and the name of our place is Bon Temps, which kind of translates to good times.
Yeah.
So it is not only explains what we feel about this place, but it's also the name of my grandfather's bar in New Orleans. So it's kind of an ode to my grandfather, who owned a very cool bar back in the day, way back in the day, but also a way to say we're all connected, and it's always good to have good times with great friends. Thank you, Bahija. This has been amazing, as I knew it would be, and really appreciate you being a part of the BLOC Party.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
The BLOC Party podcast is proudly produced by Biopharma Leaders of Color, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing leadership and community across biopharma and the broader life sciences industry. If you like this episode and want to learn more about our events, programming, or how to join as a member, visit blocimpact.org. That's blocimpact.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the next BLOC Party.